So, as some of you are aware to your disappointment, and some of you are not aware to your even greater disappointment, I've for a very long time been a big fan of fan fiction. Pun not intended. I remember the first one I read was back when I think I was 13 or 14, and it was Life After Ava. And I immediately got really kind of interested in it, and I've been reading it ever since. I think what really kind of made me interested in it is particularly in a lot of anime, there's not really any progression between, like, if there's a romantic relationship between characters. It just never really seems to go anywhere until, like, the last episode or the epilogue or something like that, even if it's something extremely central to the plot. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the development of relationships between other characters. The written word is very different from watching something visually. It's a bit more objective in that you can you have to, as a writer, kind of describe more exactly, like, this facial expression looked like this or something, and there's normally a descriptive word. It's also, I find, in a lot of cases, and I mean, 90% of fan fiction is horrible, often degenerate garbage. But every now and again, you find something that's substantially better written than the original, that solves plot holes, that does a better job with the characters, that fixes inconsistencies, things where people act out of character, or even takes a alternate AU view of the series and answers those questions. What if? This is particularly useful in series like Isekai or Harry Potter or something like that, where there's this underlying system that's completely underutilized by the author, and that if the protagonist had any brains whatsoever, could really easily break and make things go completely insane. So, to that end, we're going to take a look at probably 10 of, if not my 10 favorite fanfics of all time. And this isn't really organized by quality. This I decided to do this by fandom. So it's kind of hard to really compare a lot of these things. Like, there's ones that I think are better and ones that I think are worse. But some of them are humor, some of them are romantic, some of them are drama. There's all kinds of different stuff to it. So that being said, let's start out with two honorable mentions, then we'll get to our list. So the first one we're gonna do is Scar Tissue, which I didn't label because I'm retarded. Which is an Evangelion fanfic. So this is like the most, I don't know, angsty. I don't even want to call it angsty, try hard, edgy, melancholic, depressing thing I've ever seen. So this takes place in the aftermath of the Third Impact, where people start to come back to life. And basically, Asuka in this is a complete psychopath, at least for the first half of it. And because Shinji jerked off to her, she starts like raping him and torturing him and beating him up. And Shinji winds up going to like the hospital, and it's just both of them are just completely fucked, and the whole thing is just super angsty, and it goes on and on and on and on. And it's kind of therapeutic if you're someone who's depressed and kind of wants to kind of read something angsty. Well, you eventually get to a happy ending. It just takes a really, really long time. But I enjoy it for what it's worth. Next, we have something the complete opposite. This is On Love's Tale, which is one of the most laugh out loud, funny, and adorable things I've ever seen. So, in this Dark Souls fic, it starts off in the painted world where the chosen undead comes across Priscilla, and he's like, hello, like 3 meter tall, super hot dragon lady. I'm gonna win your heart. And he winds up doing that because Priscilla's very lonely. He's very polite to her. He flirts with her. He tells her she's beautiful. And they very quickly get into a relationship. And I mean, if you're in a relationship with Priscilla, who's like 3 times your height, is really hot, and is a half dragon, I mean, that kind of makes you a Giga Chat. And people he comes across think he's both crazy and a Giga Chat. But it's kind of funny to look at some of the alternative stuff that happens because Priscilla's around. Like when they're going through the Duke's archives, she just sighs through literally everybody extremely easy. And you just have a lot of like wholesome stuff, like they get married, they build a house together, that sort of thing. Like I said, people think that the guy's a massive Chad, and I'm inclined to agree. But just in the Dark Souls universe, which is not known for its humor or its being lighthearted and wholesome, it is a welcome change. So the next two are by the same author. And it was kind of funny when I was reading Diligence of a Shield Hero, because I'm like, there's a distinct lack of degeneracy in this. Even the swear words are bleeped out. If there's premarital sex, it's not explicit and it's dealt with as being a negative thing. There's no harem. Everyone's like monogamous. It's very wholesome. There's not like drug use. I was like, this seems really like. I wonder if the person who made this was like a Christian, because you can often tell if the person who writes something is a Christian or I don't know, is center right or whatever you want to call it. And I looked at his profile and he's like he's a Mormon, and I just go, okay, that explains everything. So these are both really good. At the time of this, though, Diligence of the Shield Hero, I don't know if I like the direction it's being taken in, but he's on like chapter 91, so the previous like 88 chapters have been good. So Diligence of a Shield Hero is one of those, for want of a nail, kind of fixer fanfics. So what happens is at the beginning of Shield Hero, Naofumi overhears Multi and the church conspiring against him, and he runs away. He buys Raphtalia at the very beginning and spends a lot of his time in the wilderness. So now Fumi is a lot more, I guess you could say, self-reliant and less angry and less kind of depressed than in the original. He's also significantly smarter and more powerful, and that largely just comes from him understanding the world's mechanics a bit better and learning to kind of deal with them. They make a lot of changes that I like. For instance, when Philo shows up, uh, Naofumi, after grumbling a bit, just starts calling her his daughter, and she calls Raphtalia her mommy, and Naofumi her daddy. And I think in the like web novel, Philo is like in love with Naofumi or something, which is pretty like fucked up because she's like a lolly. So that's really cute, and I appreciate that. There's also a lot of development given to the other heroes. Well, Ren and Itsuki kind of start off with their heads up their asses, to a certain extent. They both learn pretty quickly. Like after Ren kills Galleon, he realizes that the whole thing isn't a game. He adopts Windia, Galleon, the Dragon Emperor's daughter, and basically starts taking care of her. And when she grows up, she becomes kind of his love interest. And Itsuki kind of realizes how bad slaves are treated in Melremark, and he goes and starts trying to kill nobles to free them. And Murayasu is just a massive simp. But I kind of feel the guy who writes this is probably has been on 4chan, because he uses the term simp and thought and small and a bunch of other kind of internet lingo and stuff like that. So that's interesting, but like the other heroes eventually get to be competent and they start working together. And things, generally speaking, just go a lot better than in canon. In general, the characters get a lot of development. Um, Most of the like kind of baddish people are not as much just kind of cartoon cutouts. It kind of makes more sense who they are and why the way they are. And I don't know, I just strongly recommend giving it a try. I hate to kind of mention this because I have faith that the author's going to resolve this, but as of like chapter 89 or something, Naofumi's had this complete total mental breakdown, and he started just lashing out at everybody. And it seems like it's undoing all the progress, but once again, don't let that dissuade you. The second one is by the same author, and it is very different. Oh, the sense of humor is pretty similar. This is Shield Kid's Bizarre Adventure. So in this one, Naofumi gets summoned at the age of 10. So he's a little kid. And it's very much an inversion of what happens in canon. So really early on, when he meets Ulcray, he says that Ulcray's like the coolest guy he's ever met. And unlike in canon, Ulcray immediately just develops a lot of affection for Naofumi. And he like teaches him how to read, and he's like considers him his second son. And it's so funny to see Ulcray, who just shits on Naofumi so much, being his father figure and being like a really nice guy and that sort of thing. And I think he actually fights a couple times with his staff. So that's kind of hilarious. And Raftalia gets recruited, and they took out the thing about aging. And even though it would be Chad if you're like 10 years old to have Raftalia as like a GF, it is pedophilia and it is creepy as fuck. So they took that out. So they're kind of have, I mean, they're both prepubescents, obviously, but they just do hand holding, and they're kind of in a state where they'll probably have a relationship later. Um, they use the term small a lot to describe Raftalia. She's adorable. Erhard decides to abandon his smithery and become part of their party, and he's like level 90, so he just slaughters everything in their path. But it is just really funny. Murayasu really likes him. He views him as his little bro. He thinks that Ren's really cool. He thinks Itsuki's a dick. But overall, it's just a lot of fun, and it's something lighthearted. I did find myself laughing out loud a number of times. So the next two I'm just putting in one category because they're very similar. Allies, lovers, friends, and siblings is a lot more comedic and lighthearted. The I See True is a lot darker. But they both focus around, they're both Game of Thrones fanfics that focus around Jaime Sansa ship, which is actually one I like a lot. It's kind of a crack pairing. There's a couple of crack pairings from A Song of Ice and Fire I like. Ned Cersei is one I like, and Stannis Elia is another one I like. But they actually play off each other pretty well, because Sansa's really looking for kind of like a romantic true knight to save her. And deep down, Jaime's kind of looking for redemption, and he's looking for an opportunity to be a true knight. And they're both kind of broken, damaged people. And I just find they get along really well together. In the previous fic, it is Jaime, Sansa, and then Tyrion, Marjorie, which is another crack pairing I really like, because they actually go really well together. They both are very witty. They have some very good kind of duels of sharpness of tongues. They're both very competent at what they do. They're kind of just a joy to watch interact with each other. Allies, lovers, friends, and siblings is finished, and it finishes with Jaime and Sansa having baby Tyrion. And the sequel isn't really going anywhere yet because I think it's on hiatus, but it doesn't go too far into the future, and things are pretty happy in that universe. On the well, aside from the Red Wedding, the I See True. The last time I read it, it was in the beginning of the Long Night, so it gets a lot more grim dark. But overall, both good. I think it's an underrated pairing. Next, we have The Wolf That Met a Star, and this is one that I can't believe there's not more in this category because it's like semi canon. This is an Ashara Ned Stark fic, and I like both of these characters quite a bit. Um, this one takes place during the Great Tournament of Harrenhal, where Ned and Ashara meet, and it's kind of pretty much love at first sight. Ned's immediately smitten with her. Ashara likes him because he's a nice guy who's not immediately trying to get into her pants. And they're just very cute and sweet together. He's rewriting this because he uses a lot of really modern language, but I kind of like that. Um, I just find it funny to hear the characters like Ned or like Rhaegar talk in like 21st century millennial speak. I think that's kind of half the humor of it, and it's pretty funny in general. I like the job they do with a lot of the characters. Lyanna's pretty funny. Rhaegar's a massive tool. It's just kind of an interesting alternate history because things go very differently in this timeline, but still roughly conform to canon events. Um, I think my favorite moment is when Ares goes, "I'm a fucking genius," multiple times. That one's really good. I'm not going to go into too much detail for advice and trust because I've reviewed it separately in the past. But it's basically kind of an Evangelion fixer fic, where basically when Shinji and Asuka have their kiss, Shinji winds up because of lack of oxygen, embracing her, and they confess their feelings to each other, and it just turns into like super happy, super sappy, um, kind of thing. It's still going, I think. I was scared it was going to turn into some sort of like threesome involving Rei, but Rei just kind of is Shinji's sister, and that sort of thing happens. But overall, I just enjoy the writing a lot. It's rare to see something really kind of. I mean, there's sappy stuff at Ava, but something so kind of like upbeat, but decently written, and where they actually do an alternate timeline that's substantially different but still believable. Next, we have For Family, which is one of the most wholesome, uh, just kind of fluffy things I've ever read. So, in this one, Vader kind of gets redeemed a lot earlier. And he just kind of, once he realizes Luke's his son, he kind of undergoes a complete personality change. And his entire focus is on his family, namely his son, and trying to protect him. And he starts like helping the rebellion out because that's what his son wants. And it's just very touching and very wholesome because it's about the bond between father and son, and it's about Vader trying to seek his redemption earlier. And you do get kind of an alternate timeline that is substantially different. Well, I don't know, some aspects of it are believable, some aspects of it are not believable. But overall, I generally speaking like it. If you're looking for some good Luke Vader fluff and some good kind of feel good family stuff, then I would recommend it. Next, we have the Pellaeon option. Pellaeon option. I'm not sure if this even really counts as being a fanfic. So it's literally just a summary of the Imperial Civil War. That's slightly alternate history. So in this one, the point of divergence is after Thrawn's death, I think it's Admiral Park from the Empire of the Hand contacts Pellaeon and tells him that a bit about there's going to be the clone of Thrawn. I don't think he tells him that, but he said in a couple of years we're going to have a plan and we're going to resume the offensive and we're going to resume the initiative. So I just want you to fortify your sector and stay out of the war between the Republic and the other Imperial warlords. And it's very much kind of a military thing. So Pellaeon just kind of sits on the back burner, and it's mostly about what happens around them. So I think this is after Zinj, but they talk about Operation Shadowhand. They talk about the Emperor Reborn. They talk about Dala and the formation of the Imperial Remnant. In this case, because Pellaeon's not involved, Dala winds up forming the Imperial Remnant, and then the clone of Thrawn eventually shows up and he leads the galaxy in an alliance against the Yuzon Vong. And they win a lot more handily than they do in canon. And it ends with kind of a coexist ending with Thrawn's empire. I don't think he formally takes the title regent, but you kind of have a Worthy situation where it's still a monarchy, but Thrawn doesn't take the title of emperor. Another kind of interesting thing is he revives the Imperial Guard. He doesn't try to use Nogari again. He just brings them back, and they're personally loyal to him as Palpatine's successor. So I think it's pretty good. If you just kind of want a bit of an overview of what happens post Thrawn, it's good. Next, we have Unsung Hero, which I think got taken off of fanfic.net, probably for being too edgy. This is like the most one of the most edgy, try hard things I've ever read, but I love it for that purpose. I think most people in their teenage years have felt neglected or unloved, or that they're not living up to their full potential or people don't appreciate them. And if you've ever felt any of that, Unsung Hero is just catharsis basically in fanfic form. So in this alternate universe, Harry, it's one of those two twins ones. So Daniel Potter is the older one, and Harry's the younger one. And Daniel's the boy who lived, and his parents just kind of spoiled Daniel, and everybody loves Daniel. But Daniel's like a complete retard and a piece of shit. And Harry's kind of stuck in Ravenclaw, and everybody just ignores him unless they think that he's Daniel. And in this one, he just gets progressively more powerful. He eventually defeats his brother. It's kind of funny because Voldemort actually respects him because he basically just does everything. Like, I think the previous 5 books happened mostly the same as they happened in canon. It's just that Harry does everything and then Daniel gets all the credit for it. But it is like very much a total loser who's hated by everyone, and then you get like the day of, oh no, not quite the day of retribution, but you get him like you get gamers to rise up. And finally, I'm not going to go too much into this because I've done a separate video on this. Garthero Estelle. This is another one where when I was reading and I'm like, there's a distinct lack of degeneracy and there's not even like swearing or anything. And I looked at the profile and once again it was a Christian who wrote it. So this is a Sauron redemption fic. The problem with a lot of Sauron redemption fics is past the like initial trial, there's not really much of a story to tell. It's just Sauron being happy in the Undying Lands. There's not really any conflict or any character arc left. In this one, Sauron decides to go back and surrender, but he's still internally very defiant. And he's still plotting to get revenge on the Valar for their various perceived crimes against him. The thing that's really good about it is you completely understand Sauron's perspective, but it doesn't take away from his evil. He's still wrong and he's still the bad guy, but it's at least very much internally consistent and you understand why he feels the way he does and within the context of his worldview it is. And I think that's very hard to make you empathize with the villain but without thinking that he's in the right. So it's just very well written. Unfortunately, it just is stretching on forever. I doubt it'll ever be finished or we'll get real progression in it, but it's enjoyable. So that's the list that I came up with. If you want to post something down below, be my guest. But I hope you enjoyed it. God bless, and talk to you guys all real soon.